It's a good question that you're asking about how we get inspired. Because inspiration is not a deliberate process. It's not a process where we just suddenly inspire ourselves. And certainly we can consider some things that matter to us. And out of considering that and playing the fairy tales out in our mind, we can become semi-inspired. But it's not enough. What I've learned about inspiration is that there's a defining moment in our lives when something almost looks so deeply back at us from the reality that's here. We become so present to what we're doing, and something seems to line up in just such a way that we have an experience that only we know, that we can only become familiar with, that we only have a knowing to understand. When I was 38 years old, I had a gallbladder that was septic, and I went into the hospital. I rushed myself to the hospital at 4 in the morning. I was in so much pain, it felt like my whole stomach was going to explode. And I'd had it a couple of nights. They checked me into the hospital, and I knew it. I knew that I was going to have surgery. I knew it. I knew it. I already could tell. And they put me on a very heavy pain reliever, and they booked me, they put me in a room, and the following day I went in for surgery. I was in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. And on the 5th day, the doctor came in one morning with her clipboard, and she said, "If you had waited more time, you would have died. Because the organ, it took me 5 hours to take it out, and that it was so septic, almost gangrene, that it could have poisoned your blood and it could have gone to your heart. And had you have waited and you didn't listen to the signals to your body, you could have killed yourself." And that was the first time that anybody had ever told me that I was that close to not being here. And when she left, I sat there on the bed with my frock. And I cried. I just completely opened up, and I could see the faces in my mind of the people that I would miss the most. And I could see my work, and I could see what was coming. And it was so necessary for me to be there. I felt that it was so perfect, that all the events in the previous months had lined up so perfectly, even though I didn't like being there and I didn't like interrupting my life in a hospital. It's not a fun place to be. But it was so perfect. And then as I left the following day, something in me had died. Something in me, inside of me, I had to let go. I had to renounce fear and cynicism and judgment. There were certain things that I left there at the hospital. And there were certain elements that were new that wanted to emerge. They still felt indistinct, though. But that was the sentiment. And when I got into the car with my wife, she looked at me. And I had this lightness about me. It just, something had purged. And it was at that moment, the most unexpected moment, to be sick, that I sensed something I had to do. I have to do this. I cannot not do this. That I owe myself and my gifts to the world. And the most selfish thing I thought I could do. I wasn't strong enough to deny that. I was vulnerable. I was strong enough to be vulnerable. And my life has never been the same since. It's been a connection now to something bigger, something more aware that's relating with the reality. And I think we have very different levels in our consciousness and our awareness as to how we relate with reality and how we allow reality to change us in very, very cool ways. So that, to me, was my experience with inspiration. I would have never planned it. But it was an awesome experience.